Can I say something that's kind of funny?
Yes, always.
The fact that I just realized as we did that, we start every single week by just like saying, all right, rolling, let's go. And we just start talking, and we don't ever go over anything. Like, rarely. Sometimes it might be, oh, I have a tweet or two to go over off the top. But for the most part, I find it so funny that we just go.
Yeah, because we're...
Is that odd? Or no? I don't know. I have no idea.
We're just fucking professionals.
That's definitely not it. We can't even get our intros down properly, and it's like episode 80 something?
84. And on that note, I'm John Chidley Hill.
See what I did there? And I am Sheldon Alexander.
And this is You Killed It, the podcast about the challenge. And I would argue that segue, Sheldon, was very professional of you and well done. So
I'm good for one a week, so it sucks that it's Wednesday because it's just downhill from here.
Well, but I'm glad you chose to be at your peak here and not at your job where you get paid.
But what about the fact that it was at the start of the podcast and there's still like a lot of time left in this episode of You Killed It?
But this is when we have the most listeners. This is before we lose them all, when we go on tangents about Canadian history and food and high school and sports and rap music. When we inevitably fall down one of the many rabbit holes in our lives.
That's fair.
Let's talk about the house, because it starts off, basically, it seems like we pick up immediately after the competition, because it seems like they're coming back into the house, and TJ left some treats for Zach and Amanda to congratulate them on a job well done in that last competition.
Yeah, I mean, we get back in the house and there's a lot of celebrating going on.
Yeah.
Seems like the winning team is having a good time. And I love the chirp of, oh, you guys should be thanking the real MVP, which is Shane. I thought that was kind of funny because it's true. But it also kind of, I don't want to say I didn't like the episode because I think the elimination was so good. But I feel like we did kind of revert back to the pacing of the early episodes. Right, where I understand like the reasoning behind all of the house scenes, especially that we got for the first half of this episode. Like, I get it, I understand it, but with that said, I still was kind of like, all right, let's go, let's move this along here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's been a weird season for pacing.
Yeah,
right. Like,
totally agree.
There was some episodes are really fast paced, some are slower paced. They're kind of all over the place.
Yeah, and it was I feel like it was back-to-back weeks of kind of like fire episodes where stuff was happening inside the house, challenges were really good as well. And so when this episode started and we're 20 minutes in, not even the club scene did anything for me, really, And normally, I'm here for the club scene.
I know. When we come back to the house and everyone's celebrating, in a confessional, we have Zach explaining his and Amanda's logic, which I think is very solid, in that they're just going to keep voting for Davon and Jose. Zach says specifically that this is because they can't agree on any other team to vote on. Like, it's the one team that they're not in an alliance with.
Which makes sense.
It makes total sense. And also, I'm a big believer that, like, once you vote in a team, you got to keep voting them in until they're gone, because like, why make new enemies?
Exactly. It's something we talk about on this podcast all the time, right? Like, it makes no sense for you to switch gears and like make anyone else mad, and especially when and this is a Big Brother term, the whole like you don't want to get blood on your hands type thing.
Yeah,
right. And why add more people to the list when, as Zach pointed out, they have like kind of two different sides of the house that they're working with, right? And so why take shots at any of those people when you don't have to?
Yeah.
Just let it play out.
Yeah, just let it play out, and I think it's a solid play for them. I do agree again with Tony that Shane is a short-term thinker. He's still mad about how Shane through the competition. And I mean, you and I talked about it on You Killed It last week, but I do think in the long run, the way Shane's playing the game is going to hurt him. I agree with Tony.
Undoubtedly.
He just
Undoubtedly.
too much. It's always too much. Man, there's a lot going on early on in this episode. The other thing before we head to the club, which is your specialty, is
the other thing that was funny was Johnny Bananas, right?
Yeah.
Is that where you were going here?
I was going to talk
Johnny
about
Bananas,
Kyle and Ashley.
Yeah, well, Johnny Bananas stirring up doing what Johnny Bananas does and stirring the pot with Kyle and Ashley, right? Kind of, oh, so I noticed Kyle wasn't in our room last night. I wonder what happened. Like Johnny Bananas doing his thing. Like he always seems to be the one that's at the forefront of a lot of these, conversations that are, I don't want to say set up, but let's just say conversations that if you're Johnny Bananas, are going to make it onto the show. Right?
Yeah.
And he's kind of chirping Ashley a little bit here, and they're joking around and everything, but Ashley made the point, and the question I want to ask you, Ashley made the point of she's still trying to keep it under wraps, right? She says she doesn't want Cara to know, 'cause she doesn't want to blow her game up. But my question to you, John, is does that even matter? Like, would that be a bad thing if the whole house found out? That's my first question. Second question, what are the chances that this doesn't get around the house, right?
I think it would be bad because Cara would flip out. And Cara is one of the few people that Ashley should be worried about in elimination. And Cara still has her allies. And if you're bringing Cara down on you, you're also bringing down Marie on you. And I think Marie and Ashley get along, but I don't think they're the tightest. Marie makes this point herself that her allies are all in the Lavender Ladies, but she herself is not a lady of Lavender.
How did that play out? I don't even understand that. I don't get it. Is it because of her and Cara? Is that the reason why? Do you know what I mean? I don't understand. I was trying to figure out the disconnect between, we know that Marie and Sylvia are mad cool.
Yep.
For those that might not know, if you dig back into our archives, we did a special interview in which we interviewed both Marie and Sylvia at the same time. So we know that they're good friends. They talked about their relationship, at least at the time. I mean, I guess my question is, did something change? Why wouldn't Marie be a part of that crew?
I don't know.
It's a weird thing, right?
It is a weird thing. But maybe it's just that, as you and I have often discussed, if your alliance is too big, if it's 4 or 5 votes, regardless of what format the challenge is in, if your alliance is too big, someone's going to be left on the outside looking in at some point. You can't protect everyone. Yeah. At some point, push comes to shove. Right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's you do make a good point there. I just wonder, did something happen? Is it something we don't know? Or is it as simple as maybe the other Lavender Ladies don't want to fuck with Cara?
Yeah, maybe. Is
that it? Right? It's that simple. I don't know. But interesting thing to pay attention to or to keep tabs on, for sure.
Let's talk about the club scene, because I know the club scenes are always your favorite, and there's a lot to take away from what was being discussed in the club.
Okay.
First of all, we've got Hunter and Joss bonding over being farm boys. And it's funny because they explain that, Joss does not present as a farm boy. And also, I think farm living in the UK is going to be different than farm living in the Deep South, where Hunter's from. But I have a question for you.
Valid point.
A question for you. Is Joss actually a cool guy? Is he the perfect man? Because he actually seems like he's just a decent, normal guy, aside from the fact that he looks completely plastic and fake physically.
That's interesting, because I feel like we don't really know much about Joss at all, right? And this is now his second season on the challenge.
Yeah.
I didn't really watch much of, what's he on? X on the Beach or Geordie Shore? One of the two,
X
right?
on the Beach.
If not both. X on the Beach, yeah. So I don't watch that show, so I didn't know him coming in. But so far on the challenge, he just seems like a low key guy. He's not as hyped up or as he's not thinking so much with his head. Or sorry, he seems more to be thinking with his head, like his actual brain, a lot more than Kyle, right? He doesn't seem to be as distracted or as thirsty as Kyle is, I'll say, for a lack of a better word, right? Like Kyle is in the house and he's although he's doing well and he went really far. What did he come in second?
Kyle
in the last
season? Yeah, Kyle, he was in the top whatever. He made the finals.
Yeah, right? Like, so Kyle's been a great competitor, but Kyle's also been a great house competitor as well. Whereas we're seeing Joss, he's being a good competitor in the house, but he's more tamed, if that makes sense, right? Like, he and Amanda are doing their thing. It kind of seems like they're more coupling up as opposed to hooking up.
Yeah, I don't think they're a showmance. Like, I think their attraction and romantic connection is actually real.
Have any of your internet deep dives shown you like what's maybe gone on with those two outside of the house, like maybe since they've been taping, or no?
You know, now that you mention it, no, I haven't seen them pop up at all. Have you?
Right? Like, I don't know. No, I haven't either.
That's a good point. There's no like Cara Maria styled, like, yes, we are a couple and we're very happy kind of post.
Yeah. Oh yeah. For sure. Yeah, I don't know. I felt like I don't know Joss. I don't know enough of Joss. He's not really in the drama, but he seems to be well liked in the house, like by the guys, by the girls, so he seems to be a good guy.
Yeah. Well, this is my point. I think he is a good guy. Like, he doesn't seem to get caught up in the drama. He seems friendly with everyone and just like a super normal, regular guy. I mean, on the surface, looking at the two of them and knowing their backgrounds, you would think that he and Hunter would have nothing in common. And, like, it turns out that they are both farm boys. But, like, you could see that, again, being totally shallow, that you think that Joss would just, like, be out on the dance floor dancing or being all over Amanda. But, like, here he is. Well,
he was doing the worm on the bench, right?
Yes, but I mean, I think that's appropriate. But then,
is that what you were doing while you were in the UK recently?
Yes, absolutely, 110% doing the worm. But you know what I mean? Like, he just seems like a really friendly, grounded guy, and we haven't seen him, at least in the context of the show, do anything sketchy. Like, there's been at no point have I been like, man, fucking Joss, or like, oh, Joss, you're an idiot, what are you doing? Right? Like, he just he seems to have his shit together. But something also comes out. He says,
I know what you're gonna say.
He says to Hunter and Amanda, I know it's hard to believe I'm a farm boy because now I look like a Spice Girl. And Amanda goes, sorry, what was that? And he repeats the joke, which is, annoying, but happens at the club, that you say something hilarious and then you have to repeat it because the music's too loud.
For sure.
But Amanda doesn't know who the Spice Girls are?
Okay, so I thought so. While watching it, I was like, wait, that doesn't make sense, right? And I was trying to do math. I was like, wait a second, how old is she? Could she possibly be that young? Where the Spice Girls, like, it wasn't... Like, if you're of a certain age, the Spice Girls were a thing. So that's a moment in time. So even if that's not your kind of music, you know what that is, right? It's like Taylor Swift. If you know what I mean? It's like someone saying, hey, do you know who Taylor Swift is? And you're like, no. Like, it's impossible, right?
Yeah.
So at first I was trying to figure that out. But then, it took a little turn on the interwebs. And Amanda did respond to this. And she said,
oh, thank God,
on Twitter... She said, I know what the Spice Girls are. I just don't understand Joss sometimes. Ha 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 ha. Different language. LOL.
Oh, she's saying his accent was too thick.
Yeah. That's what she's saying. Also, in my deep dive, I did see that Davon messaged Amanda to say, you look cute in that red. And I would just like to say, I co-sign Davon.
Oh, yeah. Amanda's killing it. She's an attractive young lady. You know what? I am so into the Joss and Amanda pairing because I like them both, and they're going to have very attractive babies when they get happily married, because everyone who meets on reality TV lives together happily ever after. And
Exactly, right?
yeah,
Isn't that how it works?
there will be no
Yeah.
bumps on that road.
Nope.
Um,
Nope.
and
Also,
I'm
too,
all for it. I just like seeing people happy, Sheldon.
do you know what I think? And hey, maybe they just don't show it, but I don't think that it's also Josh's personality type, but they don't seem extra.
No.
Right? And like they're not like, it's and maybe it could be happening and they're not showing it. I don't know. But they're not like always all over each other and like all over the camera and like, having these convoluted fake scenes where they're like cuddled up in the corner talking about, like I don't know, maybe, and again, maybe they're not showing it, but I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the surface level that we get to see of their relationship. We know it's a thing, but it's not too deep, right? It's not the Kara and Kyle,
No. It's
huge drama or whatever the hell.
or
that
the
was,
Johnny
right?
Bananas Natalie. Yeah, oh my God, not Nelson.
Or the Nelson and Kayleigh, right? Like when I almost threw up when Nelson's like, "Oh, Kayleigh's lips looked like they were purple after she did the challenge. I just wanted to go over there and hug her." Like, shut up, man.
I'm so glad you said that. I was going to touch on it when we got to the elimination part, but that was so gross. Just Nelson, you're the worst.
It's just like, come on. Like, I get it on one level, but on the second level, I'm like, dude, come on, man. Come on. But anyways, yes. Shout out to the Josh and Amanda pairing. Yeah, cool. Squad. Gang.
Also, we have Johnny Bananas cozying up with Davon and Jose. And I know that part of this is him playing a political game. But also, he's sort of floating the idea of having an alliance, a loose alliance with them. Mm-hmm. And I have to say, how things have changed. Johnny Bananas used to be Mr. Rookies have to prove themselves, and he would just, like, lead his little crew to vote against rookies over and over and over again until they were all eliminated. Like, that was his go-to strategy for years. And obviously, we've discussed this many times, but the contrast of that was Wes, his arch nemesis, who was all about alliance building and like bringing rookies in and building trust. So look how times have changed. That Johnny Bananas finds himself in a position where he's trying to ingratiate himself with Jose and Davon.
I'll say this: it's a genius move by Johnny Bananas, right? And you're watching and you're seeing that. Okay, two things. One, the Lavender Ladies, obviously that's a squad, right? Mm-hmm. But to back up something you said earlier about alliances sometimes having too many members, when you have too many members, there's too many links, right? There's too many things that could go wrong because there's too many people that could mess things up, right?
Yep.
And especially when you're in this situation, it's so easy to flip just one vote to throw off this whole burn vote thing. And I think that's what Johnny Bananas noticed, and that was kind of the gameplay move that he made with Davon. Because, hey, when Kam did this, and this was a big thing that we talked about at the time, right? At the time when Kam pulled off that move, right? Mm-hmm. We discussed the fact that how would this affect things going forward in terms of would people be trying to do the same burn vote thing to manipulate and make sure that they put in who they wanted to get into the elimination, right? And I think you said, or maybe I said it, I don't know, we discussed it at length, but it was just the fact that all it takes is one person to mess this up.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you could have this plan and everyone could say they're on board, but then once you get into that room, you flip it and you actually make the decision. And I think this is where this plan was hatched by Johnny Bananas and Davon to kind of do the math, see where the votes were going to break down, and know exactly how they could flip it, right?
Yeah.
And I wouldn't put it past, question for you, I wouldn't put it past Johnny Bananas to be that calculated to figure out, okay, well, if we manipulate the game this much and it gets to a tie, what are they going to do? Maybe I'm giving them way too much credit here because that's a lot of like things to put together, but if it all ends up being a tie, right? Obviously, they're going to make they're going to make Amanda and Zach pick because they won,
Yeah.
Obviously, Amanda and Zach are just going to pick Jose and Devon, but now you have the power just like Killa Cam had the power 2 weeks ago. Do you know what I mean? It's in a backwards way, but at least you're going in and getting to pick who you go against in terms of the entire house.
Yeah.
I'm not saying Johnny Bananas is that smart, but I'm saying maybe he has that much knowledge of the game that he was able to piece together. Here's what could happen.
I think Johnny Bananas is that smart. I think he is that capable. Because I think Johnny Bananas' greatest strength in the challenge is sort of thinking outside the box. And we've in very early episodes of You Killed It, we talked about this. He's really good at game theory and being like, okay, what is the key to winning this particular game? And and at this point, Johnny Bananas has had enough time to be like, okay, well, theoretically, we could have a tie. What happens in the event of a tie? He is smart enough and has the kind of mind that would touch on that and be like, well, let's see what happens. Like, let's see if we can manipulate this.
And the thing is, too, right? You have to know that, okay, bare minimum, you're going to go in against Joss and Sylvia, right? Which is a strong team, right? Like, that's a strong team. But I think he's smart enough to know, hey, we're on, like, he knows what everyone else is going to do, right? Because, again, if you're trying to manipulate this whole house game and get everyone to burn their vote to send in Devon and Jose, that means you have to let Johnny Bananas know, hey, this is who you're supposed to be voting for.
Yeah.
Right? To make sure the burn votes are equal. So that's exactly what I mean. It's so easy for you to flip the game. And the biggest thing about this, you could be mad at Johnny Bananas all you want, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, do you have the guts to put in Johnny Bananas and Tony into an elimination when you would be the ones that have to take them out?
Well, I'm glad
he can rely on that, right?
That's true. I do think that people are scared of him. But we actually, this came up on Twitter, where...
Shout out to Twitter.
Shout out to Twitter. Oh, my eyesight's going. Alyssa Greenberg tweeted at us last week. And she asked, do you think that even though Bananas doesn't have a strong alliance, he has a good chance of staying safe since no one wants to vote for him and then have to face him and Tony in an elimination? And I made the point online, and I'm going to make it in response now to both Alyssa and to you. Is it Elisa? I'm sorry, Elisa. I'm bad with reading and names. But I made the point that Bananas isn't actually that great in eliminations. This is why his entire strategy is always based around avoiding going into elimination, because he doesn't have a great track record. Right? Like,
interesting.
The only elimination that I can really consider, I can really remember him specifically winning, is against Jordan, when Jordan flipped all the cards so that he had to go against Johnny. And not to put, I think Jordan is one of the best competitors of all time on this show. But it was a competition where you really needed to have two hands. And Jordan does a fantastic job, all things considered. But he lost. And, I feel like if it was any other competition, Jordan would have won. And, Jordan almost won that one. But Johnny, I don't think is that scary in eliminations. But that said, perception is reality, right?
Yeah.
It's not if he's good at it, it's if people think he's good at it.
And that's a strong team regardless. I think if you're stacking up, who are the teams you would want to go against in an elimination, regardless of what it is, they're pretty far down the list, right? So I think that's the point, the main point here, right? And that Elisa, what did we settle on?
Elisa.
I think that's the point there, right? That it's just, there's a lot of teams that you would want to go at, that you want to get revenge at before you get to Johnny Bananas.
Yeah.
I think, and it's a smart play by him to kind of mix it up, but also kind of take the power structure away from the lavender lady, so to say, right? It was an interesting move, and if that's where he planted that into the head of Jose and Davon, it's a great plan, right? Because hey, if you're gonna go in, at least maybe I can help you figure out who you get to go in against, right?
I have a question for you though, because I'm sick of these burn votes. The lack of power moves frustrates me.
See, I go the other way. I think this is great because I think the way that they're doing it, like Johnny Bananas is just, and from what we think happened, right? You were just shown the blueprint of how you can mess with the game. So it's fine that, Amanda and Zach win, and they're just throwing in the rookies, right? So we've seen Shane and we've seen not Shane. We've seen Faith and Angela go in. Obviously, we've seen Davon and Jose, Paulie and Natalie, right? Those are all rookie teams. Cool. I get that. I understand that. That's what happens on a normal season of the challenge. But if we fast forward a couple weeks, or I mean, what should be a couple weeks with the way that they're spacing out this season, who knows? But if we, let's say eliminate those new teams and then we get down to the nitty gritty, that's when this is going to get really crazy, right? Because you're already seeing Marie start to freak out, and it's because she thinks that she's like her friends are this crew, but she's not even getting for sure assurances from them that their head's not on the chopping block, right?
Yeah.
And there's still these rookie teams that should be put in way before you put in Cara and Marie. So I like this because the theory on paper, the burn vote thing seems like a process, right? Or it seems like the easy out. But I think Johnny Bananas is showing how dangerous it can be, because what's going to happen next week? You think that Sylvia and Joss are going to trust this process of the burn vote?
Well, no, because they got two, like they were one of the teams that could have been voted in. They got 2 votes against them, right?
Exactly. That's what I mean. The burn vote thing's going to blow up sooner than we think.
It is, and see, like I said, I don't love the power vote. These burn votes I think are lame. I agree it's interesting in terms of a strategy standpoint, but I agree with the sentiment that it's a coward move. It's a weak move. But it also, if you look at it from my perspective, it also asks the question, what teams should actually have the confidence to take out their opponents? Like, what team can say, like, no, you know what, we can, like, vote and not fear that we would be in trouble if we went into the elimination?
So here's the thing that I find interesting, right? Because I feel like the way that the game's being played now, there's a very strong focus on the guy teams,
yeah,
right? Like who are the 2 male teams, and those teams are thought of. So it's kind of like a ranking system, right? And it's very sexist. I'm going to be open with this, right? Like I think people have it ranked as, you don't want to go in an elimination against Bananas and Tony. You don't want to go in against Brad and Kyle. And then the next tier down, now you're pairing off and saying, okay, well, Zach and Amanda are a really good team. Joss and Sylvia are a really good team. And then the tier after that would be and in there you have the other male-female teams. But then after that you have okay, well, would you rather go against the all-female teams, right? As we just saw, Kam and Kayleigh get voted in again, even though they're proving to be a really strong team.
Yeah.
Right? And the reason I bring this up is because we've seen that clearly this year, with the teams being mixed and matched the way that they are, they're having eliminations where the sexes don't matter. Like the elimination we watched today, it didn't matter if it was guy or girl going in it. That shit was hard.
Yeah.
Right? And there's no strength advantage or perceived strength advantage. Do you know what I mean? So I felt like they've done a good job of evening things out so far with the challenges. So that stuff shouldn't matter. But as you said, perception is reality. And the perception is you don't want to go against the male teams.
Yeah, but also, I mean, it's interesting because I agree with you that they're not thinking clearly about the fact that having an all-male team isn't necessarily a benefit in these elimination competitions. And when you have had a team that has a male going against a female, sometimes you have equalizer bands that hold you back. Like there's
exactly
they're doing their best to keep the playing field even. And in my mind, the 2 teams that I thought about as the most dangerous in eliminations, not in general, but like
Yeah,
specifically
yeah.
eliminations, are Hunter and Ashley, and maybe Kam and Kayleigh.
Okay,
Because I
that's
think,
interesting. Okay.
I mean, we talk about this all the time. Three tool player Smashly, like, always finds a way. Like, she is sneaky good in all competitions, and Hunter's no slouch.
Hmm.
And further,
No, for sure.
they seem to get along, and they have worked together as a team before. I'm not talking
Yeah.
about in the bedroom necessarily, but they like get along. Like, they're not gonna bicker or argue. And I mean, I think Kam is one of the best elimination competitors, period. And
There.
Kayleigh's definitely the weaker link in the team, but Kam is so good at being like encouraging and staying composed that she raises the bar for Kayleigh. Like, she helps drive Kayleigh.
To me, they're Hunter and Smashley are just go getters too, right? Like you're not worried about them. Like if you don't worry about them giving up, but you know what I mean. Like if they're like winding down towards the end, you know they got to be gassed. Like you don't have to worry about them giving their all, right? And I think like that's a thing that pops up. Although I will say we're seeing it less and less as the challenge continues. I feel like the what we deem as a weaker team is a lot stronger than what we would have deemed a weaker team, let's say 2 years ago or 3 seasons ago.
Yeah, that's
Do you know
true.
what I mean?
Yep.
Like we haven't seen someone quit in a long time, right?
No, no. The only times we've seen people quit recently, it's been like very legitimate, right?
Yeah, like a legit injury or something. Yeah.
We actually saw this a flashback to this in the redemption one of the redemption house sequences
I'm so over the Redemption House. Oh my god! But yes, no, no, no.
with
You're right.
Veronica
It was Veronica.
breaking her finger or Hunter breaking his wrist. Like, those are legitimate.
Yeah,
Like, if you can have an X-ray prove how your
I think
body is
I
messed
think
up, that's
Kaylee
legit.
left. Did Kaylee leave the last season?
Yeah.
Right, she left after the whole bullying thing. Right,
Yeah,
that was the thing.
that was the last
But
thing.
I mean more like I'm referring to more like I was just trying to think off the top of my head. But what I was referring to more was like in challenges, like people giving up in the middle of
Yeah.
the challenge or whatever. Right.
No, we haven't seen that in
Um,
a while.
But I have a question for you, John.
Yes.
So there's talk of we mentioned the Lavender Ladies, right? Which is essentially Ashley. So I'm gonna name the people who are in the alliance, but also their partners, right? So Ashley and Hunter, right? Then you have Shane and Nelson. You'd have Amanda and Zach, and then Sylvia and Joss, right? So Marie is kind of worried. Marie and Cara are kind of worried because they're kind of caught in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
My question to you is which side of the house should they align with? Should they align with the Johnny Bananas and the Misfit side? Or should they align with the Lavender Lady side?
Oh man, that's tough. That's a very good question. I think
It's what I do. It's what I do.
I think it I think I would go with the Lavender Ladies. And I'll tell you
Okay.
why.
Hmm.
I think you want the Lavender Ladies because in the long run, I think the when it comes to an actual the final challenge,
Hmm.
I think that it would be easier to beat the Lavender Lady teams for Kara and Marie.
Interesting. Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Right?
Like I was thinking about it. No, go on.
They're not. I mean, some of them, like obviously, Amanda has Zach, and Zach has done finals before a few times, and he's won. But generally speaking, they're an unproven group, and like, Shane and Nelson, I on paper, in terms of like athleticism, they're both really good. But can you imagine Shane and Nelson holding it together, their partnership, for 2 days or 3 days when they're like tired and fatigued and hungry?
No, it's true. It's true. It makes sense. I think that I would go with the Johnny Bananas Misfits just because I feel like between Johnny Bananas and Tony and then Kyle and Brad, you might be setting yourself up with the side of the house that might be winning more, right?
Yeah.
And that might be more important. But also, I feel like the Lavender Ladies at some point, I feel like Zach might hold some influence. Like Amanda's not going to back down, but you can see a scenario where Zach might convince her that, hey, the better move is to piss off, Shane and Nelson than it is to piss off, Bananas and Tony.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you could see that conversation, you could see that making sense. But also, I just think that's a stronger side of the house probably. And if it's a stronger side of the house, as long as they figure out, hey, we need to all group up because the other side of the house is grouped up.
Yeah.
Right. And that's kind of the Big Brother gameplay that always messes up when there's clearly an alliance on one side, but the other side of the house doesn't realize it. And they're playing sort of as like, you know what I mean? There'll be like a strong, like 6-person alliance on the other side of the house. And meanwhile, the other side that has, let's say, 7 people will be 2 separate groups within the 7 instead of just joining together and then having the power. Right. So if Johnny Bananas is able to get everyone together, that side of the house can do some damage. But
yeah, but I'm also curious to know how much Johnny Bananas actually wants to work with those to like cobble together an alliance.
Well, Johnny Bananas, the genius of Johnny Bananas is game forever and ever in these challenges, season after season, is just what? Avoiding eliminations for as long as you can, right? And that's your strategy the whole time. And I feel like this year, that is basically the strategy for everyone, or at least it should be, because of so many twists and turns. It's not the normal thing where it's just strictly a numbers game. There's more gameplay to it that you need to figure out, right? But the key point remains the same. Avoid the elimination for as long as possible. So if that means Johnny Bananas has to befriend Davon, he's going to do that, right?
Yeah. I'm curious to know how long term he was thinking in that conversation. Like, was he just trying to get them on side for this one vote, or is he thinking like let's keep these people on side for the next?
I think it's also if he keeps them on side, that's another group that's a target before he is.
Yep, which is smart thinking,
right? Because because everybody wants Jose and Davon out, or I shouldn't say everybody, but that other side of the house wants Davon and Jose out, and it's going to be the easiest vote each and every week as long as they stay in the house, right? So it makes sense from that viewpoint as well.
Mm-hmm. I have one note. Marie, so you touched on this. Marie approaches Shane and Ashley to try to sort out the votes because she and Cara recognize that like things might not be stacking up right for them. And she says, Marie, that is, says, am I paranoid or am I just aware? And she gets really like frustrated that Shane and Ashley aren't telling her what she wants to hear. Like they're not as reassuring as she's looking for. So she leaves to go compose herself. And Shane says to Ashley about Marie that she's so paranoid and that Marie's so paranoid and dramatic. Shane, of all people in that house, should not be criticizing anyone for being paranoid or dramatic. Like, that is a little hard to take, isn't it? Like, have some self-awareness, sure. Shane. Like, know who you are. And, like, own it. Like, if you are aware that you are paranoid and dramatic, just own it. But don't then, like, turn around and be like, ugh, man, Marie, you need to cut that out. Because, like, come on, Shane.
No, for sure. And it was super weird. And that's what we were talking about. If you're Marie, you're heading into this trying to get reassurance from your friends in the house. Yeah. Right? And so it really shouldn't be that complicated to hear just like, oh, no, it's fine. This is what we're doing. But when you don't get that, I understand why she would kind of just be like, all right, screw this. Right?
Yeah, I understood why she was upset.
But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I thought just the way that this episode broke down, it just took too long to get to the main event, which was an exceptional challenge.
Well, it took so long to get to the main event, but also then there was like 10 more minutes after the main event. But let's talk about that main event. So we have the votes are revealed, and some people didn't even get votes. Like, no one voted for Johnny and Tony. And then
Yep.
it was a three-way tie where each team had received 2 votes. Joss and Sylvia got 2 votes. Kam and Kayleigh got 2 votes. And Jose and Davon had 2 votes, but because Zach and Amanda had voted for them. Like the power vote is what put them in trouble. And then
Yep.
to break the tie, TJ just says to Zach and Amanda, well, you guys are the MVPs. You have the power vote, so break the tie. And Amanda immediately says, we're obviously voting for Jose and Davon. Which, again, off the top of this episode and of You Killed It and this episode of The Challenge, Zach laid it out, and, it's the smart play for this team. But because only Zach and Amanda voted for them, and they can't go into elimination, Jose and Davon can pick literally anyone else to go into the house. Which
is amazing.
It's amazing. And Zach and Amanda love it because, this is ideal, right? Like, their hands aren't getting... They're not getting blood on their hands.
Yeah.
But, either Jose and Davon go home or some random team, arguably, I think the case could be made that Jose and Davon are the weakest team in the house at this point. So if they somehow get an upset, that's even better for Zach and Amanda.
Yeah, there are a lot of things I found interesting about how this played out, right? Because everyone basically had to show their cards, and so it was easy to figure out who flipped it, right?
Yep.
So we got to see that it was Joss and Sylvia voted for Brad and Kyle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no. Yeah, Joss and Sylvia voted for Brad and Kyle. We got to see that Shane and Nelson used their burn vote on Cara and Marie. We saw Hunter and Ashley went for Kam and Kayleigh. Bananas and Tony didn't say, but we figured out very easily what they did. And at that point, it was funny because you touched on the little argument between Amanda and Zach, and I found it funny that he was trying to tell her, eventually you're going to have to pick one from your lavender horse, right?
Yeah.
Which I thought was just a funny line, but also to show that it was a real conversation. Right? It's a real issue that they're going to have to deal with. It wasn't just their, because I feel like a lot of those conversations end up coming off as kind of scripted.
Yeah.
Right? That seemed like a real discussion that they need to have. But at the end of the day, John, who should Davon and Jose have picked?
Goddamn, not Kam and Kayleigh. I don't know why people think that you can take on Kam in an elimination. She's now 5-0. To skip ahead of what happened, she's now 5-0.
I think Jose was thinking more about revenge instead of gameplay.
But
right, and I don't even mean that because I don't think that Kam and Kayleigh should be their top pick, but I don't think that they're that far off from being the pick.
It should have been Shane
I mean?
and Nelson, though.
Should it? I don't know. I feel like this, especially because the challenge is right there, right? And I noticed this week they made a point of having one of the teams acknowledge, oh, wow, this challenge looks kind of crazy.
Yeah.
As they all walked up, right? So that kind of, to me, was a tip of the cap to the fact that, hey, if you're the one going into the elimination, you get to see, you already should be thinking about, well, who would be good at this challenge, right? Not knowing the rules or whatever, but you still get to have some idea. So if you knew that someone was terrible with water, right, you might want to put them in. So I don't know who they should have picked, but I don't think it was that far-fetched to pick Kam and Kayleigh, right? The one thing, though, I will say, isn't that a huge risk, right? You're going to go forward with this burn vote thing, but now you know what happens if it ties up. And how easy is it to have it tied up and then everyone becomes vulnerable again?
Yeah.
Because if I'm Johnny Bananas, I'm trying to do this exact same thing every single week.
Yes.
And the reason why is because I know people aren't going to pick me. There's going to be 3 or 4 teams that you're going to pick before you're trying to come for me and Tony. So if I'm Johnny Bananas, I'm messing with this every single week and trying to figure out how can we get this to be a tie so that whoever goes in, they get the power and they get to pick who they're going against.
Yeah. But you can't do
Also,
it. You can't do it every week, right? You need it. It's
the numbers. Yes,
the numbers.
yes,
It's hard to construct a tie. But your point stands.
Who I don't know. I really don't know who I would have picked if I was them. I think Joss and Sylvia would have been a thought because I also think you got to figure out people who are composed, people who might not have a good working relationship. So maybe Shane and Nelson would have been good, right? Because you could see Shane flipping out very quickly, right? And their teamwork being horrible. Because I think that would be a part of this challenge, a massive part of this challenge. If you're not good at working with people, or you and your partner have a bad relationship, that would be a huge pick.
You can also kind of guess who would go in the tank versus who would do the climbing. Not that they were eligible to go in, but like if they could have picked Amanda and Zach, Amanda has to be the one that's getting dunked because she's not going to be strong enough to lift Zach up. Like you can't have Amanda scaling the wall to pull, like to be operating the pulley. Like that's.
But like Shane is an all-star swimmer, but I feel like he'd be freaking out at Nelson for messing up.
Yes. Well, and that's another example. I mentioned this because of Joss and Sylvia. Sylvia would have to be the one going into the tank. Because, like, I imagine she's not strong enough to be lifting Joss up and down. So, like, you can kind of do some work, like, deduction that way about, like, would Sylvia be able to remain composed coming in and out of the tank? And to your point,
a great question.
Like, I guess Shane would likely be the one to be dunked because he's the better swimmer, but he would also get frazzled, to your point. You know what I mean? So, like, I think you can kind of logic it out. And I thought about Kam and Kayleigh and, how they performed in this. And at first I was like, man, why would you have Kayleigh be the one to be dunked? Because Kam is always so composed and level-headed. But I guess the thinking was maybe Kayleigh is not strong enough to lift Kam out of the water.
Yeah, possibly.
I'm not 100% sure like the size difference between the two of them. And like we never really have a sense of Kayleigh's level of fitness. Whereas Kam is definitely a very strong person, but like I don't know about Kayleigh.
We also don't really know the difference in like their confidence in the water.
That's true.
Right? Because like being able to swim and being able to like hold your breath for a long time underwater and remain calm and memorize shit, right? Like the difference between that and being able to swim are two different things. So yeah, on that side, we also don't know how that played out, and it'd be hard to know, like for all we know, as we said, no one wants to pick Johnny Bananas and Tony, but maybe Johnny Bananas and Tony would suck at this challenge.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's the equalizer in all this. Like we literally don't know when you have a challenge like this. And that leads me to something I want to bring up with you. Like, how crazy was this challenge? Like, this was hard, no?
On top of going into the freezing cold water, being upside down for that long would be awful. Like, they were at it for 45 minutes. Imagine being upside down or having to engage your core to, like, kind of get right side up when you're out of the water for 45 minutes. I can't tie my shoes without getting a headache. Like, that would be so hard.
My thing was, I'm watching it and I'm thinking, man, this is so crazy. This is so hard. And then I was like, oh yeah, and the water is freezing cold.
Yeah.
Like, what a crazy challenge. It was super hard. And they heightened it and made it seem so much worse by the way it was edited. Like, it was edited so well with them like flailing underwater and like struggling to get up for air and stuff. And at the very beginning of it, like when it first started and they were all like, Jose, let her up. She's been under for a long time. Like, I was kind of like, wait a second. How do you communicate back and forth with your partner that you need to come up for air? Right? Like, there are so many things that I was like, yo, this is fucked up, no?
Yeah. And that's a good point. Like, I think people will focus on the cold, the temperature of the water. And I think people will focus on like how difficult the puzzle was. But to your point, so hard to like know when you're supposed to pull your partner up. Like, do you just agree, like, I'm going to give you 30 seconds and I'll just count it off in my head, and like whether you're ready to or not, after 30 seconds you're coming out of the water. Like I don't know how you figure it out. And one thing I found interesting was Davon was so composed and like pulled together. Like when they had the wide shots and you could see both tanks, you'd see Kayleigh thrashing around and like having a hard time, but Davon was like still. Like you just saw her legs sticking out of the water. She was clearly just like letting her arms do the work under the water, which I think is smarter, because like if you're Kayleigh and you're thrashing around like that, you're gonna wear yourself out. Like you're gonna be exhausted by that.
Yeah. Oh no, it was crazy, and I mean, to the visuals of them once they were both done, I was like, holy shit, like that was real. And plus the reactions, right? The cutaway shots to the other cast members watching them do this. And then once they were done and someone was yelling, I forget who it was, but one of the cast members were yelling as soon as it ended. They were like, get them down. Like, right. Like they sensed it, like watching them go through that for, as you mentioned, 45 minutes. That's a long ass time. That was a hard ass challenge. And that's why also too, Shane's a jerk, right? You saw everyone else kind of feeling for them. And then Shane in one of his confessionals just said something to the effect of, oh, seeing Davon struggle, like I don't mind that at all. I'll watch that all day. Something to that effect. I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
But it was something in that jackass nature that was just kind of like, really, bro? Okay.
Well, and ultimately, what did she do to Shane that was so offensive?
Right?
She didn't vote in his best interests.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's
I don't know. It is super weird.
That's one thing.
Super weird.
I mean, I know the entire point of the show is to be like dramatic and entertaining, but that's one thing I don't understand is when people get so upset because other people don't vote the way they want.
Yeah.
Like it'd just be like, it's one thing to be like how dare you vote against me? But when you're like, we should all vote this way, and then someone else votes another way, like, just be like, man, well, that sucks. Duly noted. I can't count on you. And then, like, move on with your life. Like,
for sure.
How is Shane still salty?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a lot of drama that he creates every single season, but it never changes. Almost like it never changes that Kam keeps doing her thing in eliminations. And as we mentioned, they win. And it was weirdly shot because as soon as I saw that Davon wasn't there when they announced it,
yeah,
I was like, well, obviously they lost, right? Like I'd be kind of pissed off. And if I'm still freezing and you're telling me we still got to shoot this and I'm still freezing cold, you got to tell me that we lost because you got to tell me that we won for me to come film this, because if my ass is still freezing that much, I'm not coming out of this warming truck or whatever they called it just to stand there to have me lose.
Yeah.
Right. So that was my headspace when I saw it. And I saw that Davon wasn't there, but Kam, I guess, to paraphrase and kind of steal a line from The Wire, you come at the queen, you best not miss.
Yeah, well, and that's my point. Like
the lesson here, right?
Why I have it in my notes, all caps. Why would you try Kam? Right, she is now in 2 seasons 5-0 in eliminations, and to the best of my knowledge, there is no resource that looks at like all-time records in eliminations. Although that would be very handy for people who have a challenge podcast. But based off that 5-0, she's climbing the ranks. I know that Laurel was like 11-1 until she lost to
to
Camilla. But she was 11-1, and I know that there was one season like The Ruins 2 or something like that. One of the much earlier seasons, a generation ago in the challenge, where Wes just kept getting thrown in elimination after elimination and kept rolling. But like 5-0 is putting you into the top 10 all time for sure in terms of career elimination records. Like she's climbing those ranks fast.
It's big things. And the part two, I think she's doing a lot of she's doing a lot for the perception of Kayleigh's game as well.
Yes.
Right? Like, she is carrying Kayleigh, and what I say carrying, I don't mean in the literal sense. I mean, she's, I guess, carrying the perception of Kayleigh, because we had this like terrible thought that she's not a good competitor. She's not one of the stronger female competitors in the house. But Kam is showing how important it is to be a good partner.
Yes.
Right? And be super motivating, be super, like in your corner. And even after the elimination ended, and they went to like the warming truck or whatever, and they're waiting to find out who won, Kam is walking with her arms around Kayleigh, and she's telling her, hey, regardless, win or lose, doesn't matter. You did a great job. That was amazing. Win or lose, I don't even care who won. You're a winner. Like, that was amazing. And I think that's so important, right, in terms of the dynamics of your team. Because Kayleigh is going to want to try super hard for Kam, because she knows that Kam has her back. And going back to what we were talking about last week, when you talk about Tori and Derek, right, you see how different the dynamic is when two people aren't in each other's corner. So, yeah, I don't know. It was cool to see that. One thing I did want to point out, though, was Kayleigh giving a reason as to why she thought bananas would flip and try to put them in, right? And she said that it was because they sent bananas' sex toy to the redemption house.
I don't think that's the case at all.
I don't think that's the case at all either. And someone else who disagrees would be Angela herself, who took to Twitter with her Twitter fingers and said, nah, sis, first of all, the sex toy is in the redemption house. Let's not get too ahead of ourselves here. Second, in order to send us anywhere, you needed to have the balls to go against me and Faith, and y'all didn't.
Nice. Very nice.
Yeah, I mean, I just like the elimination, the twists are so good. I just think that I don't like the fact that this is being stretched down into like 45 episodes.
Yeah, no, it's
like how lit would this season be if this was just cut down, right? It'd be such a dope season.
I mean, I agree with you entirely, but I'm curious, like, what could they cut out at this point? I guess they could have cut back on the Kayleigh Nelson nonsense. But that's only saving them like 10 minutes. Like, there's...
Yeah, I mean, you could cut down like the actual nomination votes, just show everyone going in, and then just announcing who the hell gets eliminated, who ends up in the actual elimination round.
Yeah.
But, I mean, either way, I get it and I understand it, and overall I am entertained. I don't want to say that. But the pacing of it all slowed back down a little in this episode, and then it wasn't until halfway through that things picked up, and I was like, okay, I'm here with this.
In all seriousness, though, like, we've joked, and people are joking online about how long this season's going to be. Mm-hmm. This is the first week of September. This show is for sure going to go until November 1st. Like, there's definitely 8 episodes left, at least.
Oh, 1,000%. Yeah.
So that
1,000%.
That takes us into November. That's a long time. And this started in July.
Long season. It's a super long season. It's crazy what's going on right now. And again, this episode from like the 30-minute mark on, essentially, was a great episode.
Yep.
Right? Because even, like, again, that elimination was crazy. That was one of the craziest eliminations ever. I would love to have known, like, the safety specs that they had, in terms of, like, the on-site, emergency responders that they would have had to have standing by, right? Like, I'd love to know how the safety specs of how they communicated between each other. Like, there's so many layers to this challenge that made it so amazing. And then once the challenge ends, you have so much more drama as well, because then Jose and Devon end up back in the redemption house, and Tori is not happy.
No.
Right? And she's not happy because Jose... Sorry, you're going to say something.
I was going to say, this is what they should cut out. They should cut out the redemption house. Like, this season would be much shorter.
True.
Without the redemption house. Or, like, every episode of the challenge... The redemption house takes up between 5 and 15 minutes of every episode. And I'm just like, I love Tori, and I agree with her, and like I this scene by itself was interesting to me, but this can be cut out. Like this season would be shorter without this feature.
MTV, I'm gonna help you out. I got an idea for you. You should take all of this Redemption House stuff that you put into the episode. That's probably 10 to 15 minutes of the episode.
Yep.
Maybe 20. You should take all of that, and that becomes an online exclusive that airs right after the challenge, but it airs online, whether it's on mtv.ca or whatever. But the Redemption House is a separate show that airs right after, but online.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. You know what, Sheldon? You should get into TV.
You know what? Maybe I might just do that. but with that said, you did say that there was one part of this drama in the Redemption House that did make sense, right? And Tori gets mad because I'm interested to hear this because you alluded to agreeing with Tori, but Jose comes in and he says, because everybody is pussy and to vote the right way, and then Tori gets mad and stops him because she's saying, wait a second, that's what you did last week. You didn't vote that way. And Tori's fired up here. She's mad at Davon and Jose.
Yeah.
Should she be mad at them?
Yeah, because she was under the impression that they were going to vote a certain way. They did not, and that's why she's in.
So I disagree. She should not be mad. Because the one thing in this argument, too, is that Jose and Davon, the one thing that I appreciate, and especially about Davon was so calm and cool and rational. And I always appreciate the calm and cool, rational person in an argument.
Yep.
Because it's one of those things where one of my favorite Jay-Z lines ever is, a wise man told me don't argue with fools because people from a distance can't tell who is who. Right?
Mm-hmm. It's a classic line.
Did you catch that? Yes. Okay. So there's no need to be loud. And like, I appreciated where Davon kind of just steps in and she says, oh, Tori, no. She stops Jose and says, no, let's hear her out. I want to hear what she has to say. Let's deal with this, right?
Yeah, I liked Davon a lot in this situation.
Yeah, and she just says, well, and Jose explains it, and it makes total sense. It's like, well, this is what was going to happen, but then Shane came to us and said, you guys were going to try to put us in or put in Faith and Angela, and that's our alliance. So why would they go along with that and be on your team if they're sided with Faith and Angela? That makes no sense. Of course they have more of an allegiance to Faith and Angela than they do to Tori and Derek, right? So that makes total sense. But yet Tori, instead of saying, oh no, you know what, I can understand that from your point of view, she just flips out and she's like, no, that doesn't make sense. I don't even want to hear it, blah, blah, blah. And she just like leaves, which like is the wackest thing ever because you started this conversation as if you wanted the smoke. And then when they brought it back to you with an actual argument, you're like, nope, I'm done with this conversation. I'm out of here. And I'm like, what? Like, what's happening here?
I
just thought that was weird.
First of all, I liked Tori's argument because from her perspective at the start of the argument, Jose and Davon did her dirty, and she had said even from like the outset, like both in one of the earlier Redemption House sequences, which you and I skipped over, and I'm fine with. I'm not saying we go back, but she was saying that like Jose and Davon are target number one for her because they voted her in, and from her perspective, is a throwaway burn vote, and Derek has been in her ear being like, there's no way that's a coincidence. Like, it wasn't like an accident that they voted for us. So, like, I see why she's fired up. And I also, it's not that it really excuses her, but, like, it's hard in the midst of an argument to be like, you did A, B, and C, and then, like, the person you're arguing with, like, brings new information to the table. Especially in this case when she trusted Shane. It's hard to be like, well, new information has come to light. I'm sorry. Let's go from here. Like, it's hard to go from having days, maybe weeks of pent up anger, and to have it explained to you, and being like, oh, well then, continue with your story. So she exited the room, which is perhaps not the most mature thing, but it's a move that is reasonable and acceptable.
Yeah.
I
No, that's cool. I totally understand.
I have a thought on Jose though.
Okay.
And I noted this in my notes when he chose to pick Kam and Kayleigh, and he didn't, to go into the elimination, he didn't run it past Davon really. He just sort of like threw it out there, and she was clearly surprised and not thrilled because she knows that Cam's a real one. And I think one of Jose's problems is that he's addicted to the drama of surprising people.
Yes.
Right? So like I think
that's fair.
He likes, in that case, he liked the like he's too into the we're going to turn the house upside down feeling. Right? And so like he likes in the elimination he liked the even surprising his own partner with picking Kam and Kayleigh, but he also liked being able to like walk into the redemption house and like tell everybody what's going on. Like he's too into that kind of attention, and that I think is one of the big problems with this political game, because he's got a terrible political game. But like we saw this in sort of his challenge debut in Champs vs. Stars, where he like approached Devin to try to like form an alliance. He's too into the like he wants those gotcha moments too badly. And like it's better to play like Zach and Amanda, where it's like it's predictable and boring to constantly vote for Jose and Davon, but there's a logic to it. It's not making you new enemies. It's not surprising your teammate. It's like slow and steady wins the race, right?
No, that's fair.
I think that's a key part of Jose. But then he actually has something go his way with some surprise, which is Davon and Jose win the double cross without even pulling it. The 5 other teams in the house all pulled the wrong boxes. And so Davon... Which is
amazing.
It's amazing. I mean, I'd say what are the odds, but there actually probably are, I guess it's 1 in 6 chance. But yeah, it was crazy. It was a crazy turn of events. Again, I'm sick of the Redemption House, and like we didn't need a 5-minute scene with TJ and like the formality. Like just put some limes in a bucket and choose names. Like, let's go. But
yeah, I mean, it was cool, right? It was a cool scene because I love how hyped up Davon was as soon as it got down to being Faith and Angela.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the interesting part of it was, I guess, if it was Faith and Angela or their team, they're probably going to pick the other one to go against, right?
Yeah.
That's my assumption.
Well,
also, though,
go ahead.
If it's one of the other teams, if let's say CT won, I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that CT and them would probably pick Jose and Davon, no? Or Faith and Angela too. So there's an interesting dynamic to this because you're picking who you want to go against to try to get back into the house, right?
Yeah. And I agree with your assessment, and I think that within the Redemption House, Davon and Jose have the advantage that they are tight with Angela and Faith, but they're also tight with Pauly and Natalie. So, like, yeah. I think that part of Davon's excitement was that she was like, oh shit, like, they will probably take us with them. Like, that's...
Yeah.
But, here's my prediction. I think Jose and Davon's loyalty is tighter with Pauly and Natalie. I think they're going to take Pauly and Natalie with them into the Armageddon, and I think they're going to lose. I said this last week that I thought that Pauly and Natalie are going to, and I think this is how it happens.
Yeah. No, I could see that. It's going to be super interesting. It's definitely going to be super interesting because, as you said, Jose's a wild card, so we don't really know. Whatever you think the logical pick might be, he's got a different game in hand that he's playing, that he's trying to get off, right? which also includes his song, which I know we talked about a little bit last week, but it was funny because I had a full breakdown with one of my friends I work with, Timmy Haggs. We had a full-on breakdown about whether Jose's song was good or not. We didn't really come to a consensus, but the beat was nice. That was a conclusion we came to. But he was saying that he went online and like, yo, that shit's on like Apple Music. Like legitimately, you can go on and buy Jose's song, right? It was like, okay, all right. So you're right. He does have different angles that he's trying to hit right now.
This is one of the rabbit holes that we will often fall down to. My issue with this is that between auto-tune and the fact that Jose, I am confident, did not produce his own beats. Like you just said that like the beat is good, but I am 100% confident that he did not do the beats. So
that's also music. Like Drake doesn't do his own beats. Kanye is like stealing beats and things from other people. Like that's the music industry.
But that's not all musicians.
No, of course not. No. But that's like the genre of music that I guess Jose is in.
I'm just saying that he's not going to be I'm not impressed with him as a top-notch musician. He just has the resources to buy himself a good beat.
Oh, that's fair.
Right?
That's fair.
Yeah.
So
like, you know, and like we don't know if he actually is a good singer because he could be auto-tuned. So
definitely auto-tuned. But yeah.
So like
either way,
congrats Jose on buying yourself a good song. Congrats on being Rebecca Black.
Oh wow. Shots fired.
Come at me, Jose.
So I'm guessing you're not picking Jose as your MVP for his song?
No.
Who are you picking for your MVP, or am I going out of order here?
We should do the quotes first, and then we'll do the MVP. What stood out for you as the quote of the episode?
The quote from the episode for me, I guess, comes from that Ashley, Shane, and Marie conversation. And Ashley in her confessional, where Marie's kind of flipping out, and Marie just gets up and leaves. And Ashley in her confessional says, Marie is all over the place. Yes, Marty. Yes, Maria. Whichever Marie, in quotations, I'm talking to right now. I don't know what to tell you, right? And I just thought it was kind of funny because it's a representation of the fact that this house kind of can make you go crazy, right? And like, you know, you kind of have to wear different hats, and kind of maybe certain situations call for Marnie. Certain situations call for Marty. Certain situations call for Marie. You know what I mean? I just thought that was funny. And it was funny because it's Ashley. Ashley is such an interesting person in this house because she's so good, but yet is so like, I don't even know how to describe it. She's like a wizard almost. She's like a challenge wizard. Because you look at her and you think like, okay, here's this Instagram chick and like, you know, just taking pictures and whatever. But like, no. She's here playing the game. I just found that funny.
Yeah. Well, I keep saying it. 3-tool player. And I'm not going to have the time to scroll back in my mentions, but someone pointed out that she coined the term politicking. Ashley brings so much to the table. I'm sorry to whoever tweeted us about that, because you're right. That's a good point. She contributes so much to the game. I'm sorry that I'm too lazy to look up your name. But good job, you.
It's all right. It's on the internet. It lives forever.
My quote of the episode, I can't attribute to anyone, but this is the how closely I watched the challenge. Are you ready for this, Sheldon?
Yep.
In the Redemption House, on the kitchen wall, someone wrote, "Of the things I've lost, I miss my mind the most." Which is like an expression I've heard before. But I love that someone, because they have one of those like chalk paint walls. I love that someone took the time to write that on the wall, and it's very true. To me, that seems like a Veronica or a Tori that would have like the cleverness and the creativity to write that on the wall. But whoever did it, I think it's very apt for the challenge.
No, that's pretty good. I like that.
So I have to ask you, Sheldon, Who killed it for you this week?
I have a very controversial pick.
I love it. I love
it's
it.
Controversial because, normally it has to do with, sometimes it's easy. It's like if you won the challenge or the competition that we see, you win the You Killed It MVP award, right?
Yes.
This time around, I'm picking Davon. And I know that they didn't win. I know that they lost the challenge, right? But the reason I'm picking Davon is because I just think that she had a very strong episode. And what I mean by that is I'm giving her a lot of credit for, one, keeping Jose as even-keeled as you possibly can. I think that's a very difficult thing to do. It's a difficult thing to accomplish. And I think Davon has been a very good partner for Jose, who is someone who probably would have self-destructed already if he was partnered up with someone else, right?
Yep.
Two, I'm going to give her a lot of credit for co-opting this whole plan with Johnny Bananas. And again, we don't know if they plotted this whole thing out to where it would come down to Jose and Davon getting to pick who they wanted to go against in elimination. But I'm going to give them credit for it anyways, for at least realizing, hey, there's that side of the house. We need to figure something out. I'm going to give her a lot of credit for that. Two, I already mentioned, or three, I guess I'm on. I don't know where I'm at. But she did a really good job in the elimination. I know she lost, but I'm giving her and Kayleigh just like huge stripes for that because that looked so difficult. So I'm giving her a lot of credit for that. The reason why I'm giving her the nod over Kayleigh is just because of the other aspects of the game that I think Davon did a great job in. And of course, I already mentioned the conversation with Tori and, telling Tori like, bye, like getting her out of here because she was super salty. But just the way that Davon is handling herself in a very tough situation where one week you have Shane screaming at you, you're constantly getting voted in, you had Shane trying to like make your team lose on purpose. Again, you're partnered with Jose, who's a wild card. And the way that Davon is just handling herself so far, I'm so impressed. I'm rooting for Davon. I want her to succeed. I don't think they're going to win. I don't think they're going to get back into the house. I don't think even if they did, they'd have a chance to win the challenge. But I will say I'm entertained by Davon. She's having a good season. I applaud her. She is my MVP. Davon, you killed it.
I don't think it's that controversial a choice because Davon's my pick.
Oh, okay. Wow, okay.
I think that Davon, I mean, all the points you made are all very legitimate, and I'm in complete agreement. But also, we've been praising Smashley as being a three-tool player. I agree that I think Davon's an ideal teammate for Jose to sort of rein him in a little bit. But also, the reverse of that is how well would Davon be doing if this was an individual game? Mm-hmm. Davon would, I think, without Jose, I don't think Davon would have faced an elimination yet. I think that she's smart enough and capable enough. If this was just like a every person for themselves kind of version of the challenge, I think she would have kept her nose clean. She probably still would have gotten into that fight with Shane, but I think she would have skated through that. And I think that if it had been like a solo competition, it would have backfired more in Shane's face rather than in hers.
For sure.
So
the other thing,
I think that I think she's just so composed and mature and a good competitor. I mean, we didn't say this specifically, but Kam and Kayleigh only won by 3 pieces. Like, it was very close.
And I'd like to add that Davon on Twitter says that, quote, when you only lose by 2 pieces only because your partner decided to go in at the end in the last minute and start rearranging stuff. But you have to support him and take the L like a champ.
Yeah.
So imagine that Jose rearranged things at the very end and that could have been why they lost.
I would have been beyond furious, but
but again, that's what we're talking about, right? Being a good teammate.
Yeah, very good teammate. I think we should just say where people can find us on the Soch.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we talked about it last week. Had a lot of fun doing the Sia live chat right after the show, which is kind of cool. So you can check out that video now. Lives on YouTube if you go to at or no, it's not at. It's just Sheldon Alexander. Search the You Killed It podcast on YouTube, and you can find that and like and subscribe, of course, on iTunes and SoundCloud. And you can find me on Twitter at Shell Alexander and on Instagram, Sheldon Alexander.
And you can find me on Twitter and on Instagram at J Chidley Hill. That's it. Those are really the only places to find me. And until next week, this was You Killed It.
You.